Dear viewers of the Tom Photo channel, when you press the Q button on your Fuji camera, you access the summary screen of the most important settings. Among these settings are highlight tone and shadow tone. I sometimes receive questions about how much these options influence your photos. Today I'll illustrate this with examples. The tone options affect the curve of your photo. Understanding the curve is key to almost any photo editing. So let me show you what it is first. When you open your image in GIMP, for example, and select Curve from Colors, Curves, you'll get a window with a histogram in the background and a straight diagonal line on top of it. That line represents your curve. It is currently straight because you haven't modified it yet. But grab the line with the mouse and move it up and down, and you'll see that when you pull the line, other parts of it move along as if they were connected. The curve behaves like a rubber band in a way that can be stretched. Moving the curve affects the intensity of the pixels corresponding to that location in the histogram. It also affects the neighboring pixel intensities in the histogram to some degree. So when you pull down the lightest pixel intensities, these intensities are reduced throughout the entire photo. Pixels that are more similar in intensity also change their intensity, but to a lesser extent. This allows for smooth changes. You can anchor the curve at various locations to give it any shape you like. What shadow tone and highlight tone do is modify this curve. You choose the degree of change you want, the part of the curve, and the direction, but the camera doesn't actually display the curve, so you won't have time in the field to fine-tune the curve visually. You'll want to instruct the camera with simpler commands like reduce the curve in the light region just a little. Shadows are represented in the left part of the histogram. So when you instruct the camera to set shadow tone to -2, for example, it means the shadows are reduced by 2 arbitrary units. This, under the hood, lifts the curve in the left part a little bit. Setting it to +2 will lower the curve, increasing contrast and making shadows darker. For the highlight tone, negative values will lower the right part of the curve, and positive values will move it upwards. Although the direction of movement is the opposite for shadows and highlights, it is true for both cases that negative values will make the curve more flat or horizontal, and positive values more steep or vertical. In harsh light conditions, you might consider using negative values for the curve, while on gloomy days, you can experiment with positive values. I hope this makes sense. But now let's look at some examples to make it more understandable. On the left is the photo with the default settings, and on the right is the modified version. We'll start with highlight tone and raise the highlight part of the curve slightly. This is highlight tone +1. You can see that the clouds are somewhat brighter, but have less detail. Increasing it to highlight tone +2 shows more significant differences. Let's try the other direction for highlights. Highlight tone value -1 will make the clouds more detailed and less bright, while tone value -2 will make the clouds even less bright, but add more structure. Comparing highlight tone +2 and -2 side by side makes the differences clear. Now let's do the same with shadow tone. Shadow tone +1 adds contrast but reduces detail in the shadows. Shadow tone +2 makes the shadows very harsh, almost like pencil drawings. Going in the opposite direction, shadow tone -1 softens the shadows and brings out more detail, and shadow tone -2 decreases contrast even further but enhances detail. When we place the extreme shadow tone values side by side, you'll see the clear differences. Now let's change both highlight tone and shadow tone values to their extremes. The photo on the left has both values maximally positive. It has low detail and high contrast, representing a steep curve. The photo on the right, however, is very flat and said to have a flat curve. The curve is quite horizontal in shape. I'd like to demonstrate this with another example too. The photo on the left is highlight tone normal, and the one on the right is highlight tone +2. See how the sky becomes harsher. Setting it to highlight -2 will make the sky look quite soft. These extremes side by side make it clear what happened. Remember that negative values mean a flatter profile, while positive values make it steeper. Now let's do the same with shadow tone. The so-called normal photo is on the left and shadows +2 is on the right, where you can see how the details are almost gone. On the other hand, the photo with shadow -2 on the right now shows much more detail in the shadows, although they appear somewhat flat. These extreme shadow tone settings illustrate the clear difference. Just as with the highlights, negative values make the profile flatter and positive values make it steeper and harsher. These are the photos with both tonal settings modified. On the left is the photo with both values at +2, and on the right is the same one with both values at -2. The one on the left has a very steep curve profile, while the one on the right is very flat. Why would you need these extremes, for example, you might ask? The harsh light version might work well for black and white, and the flat one could be great for recording video, offering more latitude when doing color grading. I should also note that these tonal changes will only affect your JPEG images. If you work with RAW files, you don't have to worry about these settings because they can always be readjusted. With that, I'd like to thank you for watching and possibly subscribing to my channel and leaving a like. Your support is greatly appreciated. Have a great day and goodbye.